Hello and welcome to News in Depth. My name is Anna Kalczyńska. The Czechs head to the polls this Friday and Saturday for a pivotal election that is bound to expand the anti-establishment bloc in the very heart of Central Europe. Polls suggest the right-wing populist ANO party, led by the billionaire agriculture tycoon Andrej Babiš, is set to win. Joining me now is Matthew Day, senior online editor, TVP World. Good afternoon, Matthew.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for being with us. So let us first analyze the reasons for this change of tides. What are the reasons for this dissatisfaction of the Czechs with their current government?
I think we can concentrate on purely economic issues at the moment. When the current government came into power, Spolu, it got battered. It had the waves of the COVID pandemic to deal with, and then of course you had the war in Ukraine, and that caused energy prices to soar. Inflation went up. I think inflation in the Czech Republic was at one point like over 18%. For food prices, it went up to 25%. And at the same time, people's salaries remained stagnant. They didn't change. So how much money they had in their wallets didn't change, but how much money they were spending on basic necessities increased an awful lot. And people felt that. Mm-hmm. And the times are changing now. The inflation has crashed from, as I said, from 18%, it's down to like just over 2%, which is really good news for the government. But the problem for the government is that it's news too late. Mm-hmm. And these figures, these positive figures, are not really filtering down to the pay packet, to the wallet. Mm-hmm. So people don't feel the change at the moment. Maybe if the election was taking place 6 months down the line, then perhaps the government could survive. But at the current situation, no. And they want to change, and Andrej Babiš and ANO are there knocking on the door.
Exactly. So this is quite a contrary situation to the Polish situation, right? Where Poland, a Polish government in 2019 at the COVID time, with Prawo i Sprawiedliwość, Law and Justice, knew how to manage the situation, right? And they somehow distributed the money. So basically, people didn't feel that change so much as in the Czech Republic. Social safety net, not as lavish as in other countries. Macroeconomic data doesn't translate into people way of life. So how about Andrej Babiš? Is he the one who is supposed to change that? Do you believe that he's going to distribute the money or invest in social benefits? Well, what's his program?
Well, the Czechs, they've had this economic strife, or not strife, hard times. The current government has been practicing austerity. And I think the Czechs, they want to change. And Babiš is coming along saying, look, this austerity was bad for the Czech people. I'm going to come in. He's advocating a range of policies like more generous index-linked pensions, introducing I think a price cap on energy prices, just spending more money, trying to get people out of this sort of financial trough that they've been in for a while. And it is appealing to the Czech people, or it appears to be appealing, given that ANO is leading the opinion polls. It's like 31% compared to Spolu, which are like 10% behind, 10 percentage points behind. So Andrej Babiš's economic policy does have a resonance, and I think that resonance could sort of push him into power.
Exactly. So that, unfortunately, cannot be changed anymore. However, we still don't know, and there's a big question mark as to his international politics, foreign policy orientation. Some say that he might turn Czech Republic into the Slovakia sort of country. And one of the analysts in our outlet suggested that could be, but however, still Slovakia is not the Czech Republic, and that Andrej Babiš is not Robert Fico. So what's your take on that? What is the direction that Babiš is going to head?
Well, the current government and the Prime Minister Fiala, they have deliberately tried to portray this election that it's a choice between East and West. If you vote Babiš, if you vote ANO, then the country is going to go west, it's going to go towards, it's going to adopt a sort of policy similar to Robert Fico's or maybe Viktor Orban's, and then sort of get closer to Russia. And he's saying that if you vote for us, we're going to orientate the country west. Now, Babiš, he has played quite a canny game in a way. He has said, no, that's not the case. It's not so black and white. He has said, I'm not anti-NATO, I'm not anti-EU. I'm very much in favour of these, and NATO is the bedrock of Czech security. But he has, say, struck a more a more cautionary approach when it comes to support for Ukraine.
Wow.
For example,
he pledges to slash support for Ukraine, basically.
One of these highlights is that he wants to end the Czech ammunition scheme, which has been a very successful scheme, organised by the Czech government. They've just gone around to various other governments and rounded up lots and lots of basically artillery shells, which have been sent to the Ukraine, and it's been very successful. Andrej Babiš just said, no, I want to end that. He doesn't, but he does say it should be continued, but under sort of like a NATO, run by NATO. So it won't end completely, but he wants to sort of say this is not Czech responsibility.
Why is he willing to do that? I mean, why not Czech Republic continuing this initiative? After all, if it goes under the NATO umbrella, it will still be functioning, right? So what is the reason for that?
Well, I think he might be aware that in Czech society that there is a certain amount of, trying to find the right word, not suspicion, or maybe
reticence.
Reticence, or a growing lack of enthusiasm to support Ukraine. And that's been there in Czech society for quite a while, and maybe it is growing now, but he's also aware that it has to be managed carefully. He can't say, okay, we're going to abandon Ukraine, because that would be a step too far for many people in the Czech Republic. But he can adapt a more conservative, a more cautionary approach, which maybe will drag a few voters in from the not anti-Ukraine, but the very cautious group of Czech people who, when it comes to Ukraine policy, drag them towards him, while also maintaining broad support from lots and lots of Czech people who are quite happy to maintain support for Ukraine.
And this is quite interesting, right? When we analyze the Czech Republic society, on one hand they are very hawkish sometimes, and after all, this government, Andrej Babiš government, was the one who somehow was very, they extradited the diplomats, the Russian diplomats.
So they dozens of Russian diplomats from
and under this administration they were labeled as an enemy state by Russia. So it's interesting. On the other side, they adopt quite a cautionary stance, as you just mentioned. I suggest we take a listen now. We have a listen of Petr Pavel, excuse me, who has a warning to all his compatriots.
I believe the same way as Andrej Babiš that our position within EU and NATO is the strongest guarantee that our country will remain secure and prosperous. He was very clear that he doesn't intend to support any referendum on leaving the EU. He will support our strong commitment to NATO, and I hope that this will be the strong foundation of his future government if he wins the elections and is charged by setting new government.
So at least this is where both politicians agree, right? Let's hope for that. Also, Andrej Babiš said that he doesn't want to be a Russian stooge.
Yeah.
So we might hope for a better prospect of the Czech Republic under the administration of Andrej Babiš than expected.
True, but then there are certain eventualities which could play out, because according to the opinion polls, Babiš and ANO, they won't get a majority. Therefore, they're going to have to work or try and form a coalition or work as a minority government.
And there comes SPD and Stačilo.
Exactly. So you've got the far-right SPD, who are anti-Ukrainian, and they want to, cut ties. And you have the left wing, Stachilo. Once again, not very. They are completely unenthusiastic about supporting Ukraine, and so if Babiš wants a coalition, he might have to try and work with these two parties. Now, Babiš himself has said, no, I won't work with them. But of course, things change. When you're on the verge of power, you want to get in there, and you might say, OK, look, strike a deal here, strike a deal there. Or he might not even form a formal coalition, but he could grant favours to SPD, and they will support him maybe on a case-by-case basis. But either way, that could, their influence could come into government, and that is a cause for concern in Prague, but also in other European capitals as well.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Andrej Babiš seems a bit like Donald Trump. After all, they share a vision of state like a company, being run like a company. Then they're limiting somehow aid to Ukraine and take tougher stance on immigration. So they have common points, right?
They have common points, and they have a very, shall we say, a common background. They have a lot of the same baggage. When you look at them, like they both came from non-political backgrounds, they're both outsiders, and they both relish in that. They come as disruptors. They shake things up. When it comes to the Czech Republic, bear in mind, I think for the first 15 years of post-communist democracy, the Czech Republic was dominated by two parties, centre-left, centre-right, and it provided a very stable form of political base. And then ANO comes along with Babiš, and they just kind of tear everything up, and they're the new boys in town, and they disrupt things and they do things in a very different way. Babiš is also extremely rich, like his American, Mr. Trump. I think his net worth is estimated $2.4 billion. So he is a very rich man. And he also has a whole load of legal problems, which have hounded him for years and years and years. But like Mr. Trump, despite being accused of numerous crimes and even being accused of being a communist agent during the Czechoslovak years, that kind of water off a duck's back. It doesn't impede him. People just carry on voting for him.
And nothing seemed to discourage them. Like, for instance, the fact that Andrej Babiš is a Slovak, by the way, born in Slovakia, and that he even speaks the Czech with a certain accent. So, and also that he's not being too belligerent. He's not very hawkish, right? And he's been quite moderate in the whole campaign. And some point to the fact that he's even not treating this campaign quite seriously. That's another angle.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's an anti-establishment vote, don't you think?
I think in the past, Babiš has benefited from that anti-establishment vote. Like, I am the person who's different. I'm not a career politician. Like Trump, I made my money elsewhere, so I don't need to make money here. So I'm here for the people. I think this time around, there is a softer tone, as you pointed out. The fact that he's stressing that he wants the Czech Republic to remain in the EU, to remain in NATO, that he doesn't want to work with the far right, he doesn't want them in a coalition, and he would prefer to work as a minority government rather than cooperate with these parties. This is shall we say, like a more toned down Babiš. The rhetoric is very diplomatic and political most of the time. It does flip occasionally. I think, I can't remember, he called the Prime Minister like he was an enemy of the people, or destroying the people, or something like that, destroying the people, the Czech people. That does come in from time to time, but for the most part, the rhetoric has been quite soft, like the past two debates on Czech television, when you had the Prime Minister and Babiš going head-to-head. It hasn't been a spectacular bust-up, and actually most political commentators say they're kind of rather dull affairs compared to what Trump and his presidential debates when he was running for office, which were spectacular and vicious and nasty. The ones with Babiš and Fiala were very kind of soft and cosy, and I think the most notable thing about them was that the lack of tension between the two in some ways.
So do you believe what's going to happen with the future opposition, meaning the current government, right? And so the civic democrats of Fiala and Christian Democrats, liberal conservatives?
Well, of course, you know, it's possible that they won't be out of government. Okay, they probably will be, but there are chances that they could maybe, if there are quite a few undecided voters in the Czech Republic, they could possibly swing things back towards the governing coalition. And even though ANO might emerge from the election as the single biggest party, it may not be able to form a coalition government, while Spolu might be able to once again get it all little parties together and remain in power. That is a possibility. But if they don't, then they have to go away and rethink, like so many parties that try to occupy the middle ground in European politics at the moment. They're having a difficult time because this sort of effect, centrifugal effect, is just pushing parties to the extreme. And they have to try and reorganize themselves and find out how they can maintain control of that political centre and resist the temptations to go off into the extremes.
Exactly, and that's another lesson here in Central Europe, that risky economic ambitious politics can unfortunately bring a loss. And and it's a big question mark as to the future of those politicians. However, for us, from our perspective, the most important is, of course, the direction of the foreign policy. Yeah. So what? Andrej Babiš's first visit is going to be to Slovakia, I imagine, traditionally. Mm-hmm. And the second one, do you think, could it be Poland? Could it be Brussels? Could it be Washington?
I'm sure you like it to be Washington in some ways, because you get the seal of approval from Trump, which seems to be like this kind of procession of European leaders going off to Washington all the time. But I think one aspect of, say, a Babiš victory for our part of the world, if we're talking about Central Europe, is that it kind of add to the sort of fragmentation within Central Europe which is going on now. You have the Visegrad 4 group of countries, Czech, Slovak republics, Poland and Hungary, which for a long time they've been, they've tried to organise themselves on a broadly similar line, so they at least have a common voice. I think if you get Babiš in, that voice is going to disappear. Poland, which is by far the biggest of the four, of course, it will start thinking, what's the point of trying to talk to these guys? We don't have anything in common with them now, with Babiš, with Fico, with Orbán. So Poland might just go off and concentrate on the Weimar Triangle, which is Warsaw, Berlin and Paris, which has far bigger and far more influential members in it. And so I think that could be one almost immediate effect of a Babiš government.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Thank you for being with us today. Well, this weekend will tell us all. So fingers crossed for the Czech Republic society. They're just heading to the polls this Friday and Saturday, and the election results on Sunday will be certainly commented here and analyzed on TVP World. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank
and
you.
Please stay tuned.